We begin the Tuesday edition of the Lombardi Line. Dave Ross here at Circus Sports, fabulous Las Vegas, Nevada. RGM, Michael Lombardi, back on the East Coast in New Jersey. Week 10, Michael, it's in the books. Just like that, yeah. You blink. We're into double digits. Last night capped it off with a Dolphins win out at SoFi. 23-15 is the final there. 5 field goals for the Rams. Not good enough to get it done. So you cash those tickets on Miami if you're catching the 2.5. And the under, easily cashed here, Michael. Dead under the entire game. Close 50.5. What's your biggest takeaway to wrap up Week 10 last night in L.A.?
You know, I was on Miami, but I got to be honest, I didn't handicap the game the right way. I didn't think Miami would play as good as they did defensively. I thought it would be a little bit more of a track meet. I would have probably leaned towards the over, although I'm not very good at determining how it goes over-under. I don't have that skill set in my handicapping profile. But I felt like it was, a game that was going to be both teams were going to move the football. I didn't expect Miami's defense to control the offensive line of the Rams like they did in that game. Rams getting Jonah Jackson back, Steve Ivella back, I felt like that's really going to enhance them. I know Haverstein was out at right tackle, but Noteboom has come in and played well over there. But I think this front for Miami just really showed up from the first play of the game all the way through, and their red zone defense was outstanding, holding them to 5 field goals. Look, they got away with one, Miami. Tua didn't play very well at all. Let's be fair here. You know, I mean, he took some incredibly bad sacks. I think he got bailed out on that 3rd and 16 or whatever it was where he failed it. But they made enough plays to win. I think this was a great defensive effort by Miami, something we hadn't really seen before for 4 quarters. We've seen them play good defense, but we've also seen them melt down to the Arizona Cardinals in the 4th quarter, giving up that lead. We saw them melt down to the Buffalo Bills in the second half, giving up all those points. So great win for Miami. Keeps their faint hopes alive, but I still think you have to be really concerned about that offensive line for Miami. I mean, Tua took some hits. He's going to keep taking hits because if he doesn't have that first option, David, it's over. He's got to hold it. Yeah, you're exactly right. He's looking for that first read there to get the ball out of his hands, and if it's not there, he is going to take shots, and that's not good. We saw on the interception, he's lowering his head on a tackle, and I'm saying, like all of America's like, don't do that. He does get it done. The Dolphins do get it done, though, to get their 3rd win of the year. Now, plus 350 to make, I don't know if it's an unlikely playoff run as the 10 seed in the AFC. But let's hear from Tua, Michael, and get your thoughts on where his head is at after this win in L.A.
The resilience of this team with the external noise, everyone counting us out. You know, hopefully this is an opportunity for us to not waste. You know, hopefully we can go on a run with this win and find our rhythm towards the back end of the season now. What did he play in the snow game in Green Bay? or was he in Los Angeles? I mean, like, he's got scuba gear. I mean, what are we doing here?
I don't know.
What do we got? I mean, was it that cold in the stadium? Did they have the air conditioning on that much? I mean, come on. I mean, really. It was the perfect conditions. One of the reasons I thought it was a good play, it was because it was indoors. It was perfect conditions. Look, I think the Raider game will be a really hard game for them. The Raiders, with a change of offensive coordinators, Scott Turner, the new offensive line coach, and Joe Philbin, bring Norv in. I mean, they're going to dress up. I would suspect Gardner Minshew will be the starter. I think they'll clean some things up with the Raiders. It's going to be a challenge for them because I think the Raiders went down there last year, and of course they turned it over, but they played them really well. I think it was a 10-point spread, and the Raiders were able to cover. They kind of got some momentum. They had some confidence. I would be worried about this Miami offensive line for having any sustainable success. But, look, when you win one and you get yourself going, the next game becomes the most important. And I think ultimately that's what's going to have to happen. I would be surprised on a short week. The Raiders are going to have to travel back there. They're rested. Right now the line's at 7. It hasn't moved. I suspect it's probably going to come under 7 pretty soon here. I look at that schedule, and again, plus 350 to make the playoffs. I mean, look, visions of grandeur. Nobody's running down Buffalo in the East, barring a catastrophic injury. So it's a wild card spot, right? That's what we're talking about here, America. You look at it, and you see Raiders, as you mentioned, 7-point favorites there. Then the Patriots, and then the Thanksgiving Day game at Green Bay, which would be tough. We'll figure out what the Jets look like after that. Texans don't look great now. I mean, it does seem conceivable, Michael, that they can get on a bit of a roll, but you're right. I mean, you can't come off this win and then somehow lose to the Raiders. Like, you better get and use this as a jumping off point, but you got to get back to 500 before we can talk about
the playoffs, right? Realistically?
No question, right? And I mean, I think, look, what gives you some credibility here is, as the song Emmett Fitzgerald says, the gales of November. When the weather changes, really the league shifts from being this offensive team to who's got a better defense. Defense is going to carry the day moving forward, right? Mm-hmm. And how you manage the game through your defense is critical. I think that's probably where Sean McVay feels the worst part this morning when he wakes up, is because his defense played really well.
Yeah.
And his offense didn't match it. He got his defense to the level that he needed them to, but boy, his offense couldn't really make any explosive plays, get it down the field, couldn't run the football, couldn't really block him up front. So, yeah, I think when we get into November 17th and moving forward through Turkey Day and all that, look, there's going to be no easy games for Miami because their margin of error is so small. I think whenever you see it, I mean, it speaks to if they could have found a way to win some games when Tua got hurt. You know, they go to Seattle and they lay an egg. That Tennessee's just, I mean, they were really bad. We know this about them. You can't predict what they do because offensively, that offensive line is really bad. I mean, they got pushed around last night, and it was unfair that that the Rams end up being a 8 point loser.
Yeah, and by the way, you look at the Rams now, conversely, to make the playoffs, plus $4, even longer than what we're seeing with the Dolphins here. And look, they're now the 11th seed in the NFC, 2 games behind the Packers here going forward. So you kind of felt like, and Troy Aikman was making, he said it several times towards the end of the game, how devastating a loss. You could tell from Troy's perspective of, like, as a former quarterback, looking at it through Matthew Stafford's eyes, like this was one they felt like they had to have if they're really going to be taken seriously to make a run here for a postseason spot if you're the Rams.
You know, Dave, but one of the reasons I liked Miami in this game was because I thought they got blessing. I mean, Seattle gave them a game.
Yeah.
I mean, Seattle gave them the game. And I think, to me, when you looked at what Seattle was able to move I thought Miami would move the ball more effectively because Seattle put 424 yards on them. I mean, Seattle moved the ball really well, and their offense did not move the ball on Seattle. I mean, they got fortunate because of the decision to not kick the field goal in overtime. They got fortunate with some things, but this offense, let's be clear here, they're not good on third down. They're the 25th team in the National Football League on third down. They're not good in that category. They're horrible in the red zone. They're the 30th, and we saw it last night right before our eyes. They were the 30th ranked team in the red zone. Why is that? Well, because they can't really run the football down there. That's what Sean McVay goes crazy at. The last 2 weeks, they've gained 68 yards rushing and 70 yards rushing. They can't win unless, when he wins games, he's got to run the football. He's got to have balance. He can't win without it. The first 2 games of the year, he loses to Detroit and Arizona. He rushes for 83 and 53 yards in those games. When you stop his zone runs and you force it to become a drop-back pass game, that's when his offensive brilliance doesn't really have another level to go to. It just is the nature of – it's not a knock on Sean at all. He's a great coach. It's just the nature of how you got to play him. It's like a great basketball team. If you make them play, a team that wants to run and gun, you make them play half court, they're not as effective. It forces them into their weakest area of a strength, and I think that's what happened last night.
I'm watching the game last night, and I'm just reminded, obviously, the Stafford for Goff trade, and I feel like the ceilings of both those guys could be Super Bowl, right? Stafford's already won one, so we know that, and feels like Goff, if he plays at his best level with that Detroit team, that feels like a Super Bowl potential winner there too. And then the floor does feel low for those guys. Like they can the highest of highs and the lowest of lows. And Stafford looked like last night. I don't know if it was like trouble holding onto the football, but they're just dropped. They look sloppy. Like they look. I didn't expect them to look sloppy. Just ball handling and fumbling snaps and little things, and you have to jump on to dead plays. What'd you make of that? Because I thought you kind of felt like in this 3-game winning streak they were beyond that.
I just felt like, to me, Seattle, the Rams had too many negative plays. Yeah. The bad snap to start the second half. They got, you can't overcome negative plays. It's just too hard. You get pushed back. The first play of the game's a negative play. They run that ridiculous. They run that toss play, and it gets blown up. They lose 7. The drive's over.
Right.
And he's got to throw a check down, and he ends up 4th and 4. And they're off the field. I think, to me, Miami was trying to match him on negative plays. Now, let's not forget ourselves. The disc jockey on the other side was dialing up some weird old plays over there. to trying to, he was trying to create it. It was like he was playing in the backyard. He was spinning records with, we're going to fake this way, go this way, but we're really coming back this way. Like, can't you just line up and protect the edges and run the ball inside? Like, can't we just get 3 yards instead of trying to get 80?
It is interesting to watch some of the play calling coming from Mike on that Dolphin side. Very quickly, we talked about it yesterday, and I thought it came to fruition a little bit in the game last night, that, like, McVay is not this analytical people, whatever people think of him, right? He's kicking field goals, and I know he kicked 5, and there was a lot of turmoil about that. I thought maybe later they should have pushed the envelope a little bit here.
I wonder if they're going to get on him for not kicking when he was down to 2 scores and he kicked the field goal, right?
Yeah. That did make it it did cut it to 8, but it was 4th.
I got it. I was for it. I mean, but I thought he waited a little too long for the onside kick.
Why are we kicking on 3rd down, Michael? When it was an incomplete pass, the clock was already stopped. Run a play for the touchdown, right? And if you don't get it,
I think he must have had somebody in his ear say, look, when it gets below this number, we'll have no chance to score. Because remember, you looking at the clock, you're looking at plays, not time.
So he's thinking.
Right, so I think 40 seconds, they probably felt like if we recover the onside kick, we have 1 timeout left, we'll get 7 plays.
Fascinating. I'm sitting there going, what am I missing? Is this new math, Michael, that I'm not aware of?
Yeah.
By the way,
I can't figure out the math. I can't figure that out.
The Wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald, it's my 2nd power-rated song for the saddest song ever. I've got Cats in the Cradle #1 and the Wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald #2. We got a lot more to get to here on a Tuesday on the Lombardi Line.
Coming up Tuesday on Follow the Money, Derek Stevens, owner of Circa, on Circa Survivor. Also, we'll talk to Paul Stone, college football picks. Adam Chernoff, Week 11 in the NFL, picks and props. Follow the Money weekdays, 4 to 7 Eastern on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.
Want to see who at VSiN is on a hot streak? Go to VSiN.com/picks to see all the selections and weekly leaderboard of VSiN hosts, writers, and guests. Become a VSiN Pro subscriber and get every pick sent to your inbox daily. Just head to VSiN.com/pro.
So, Paulie, have you had a chance to read the VSiN Daily yet?
Yeah, came in at 3 a.m. What's Bill doing up that late?
Well, rumor has it, it starts off with a 12-hour meditation session.
Then he just pours himself over film and live TV, really focusing and taking it all in. Bill's in with the biggest insiders, talking trade secrets, strategies, the whole 9, absorbing the info.
And then and only then can the writing process begin.
In Las Vegas, Bill's late night becomes your early morning. Wake up to the very latest betting insights in your inbox with the VSiN Daily. Sign up for free at vsin.com/newsletter. This is the Lombardi Line with former NFL executive Michael Lombardi on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.
We continue the Tuesday edition here of the Lombardi Line. Dave Ross and Michael Lombardi here with you. Week number 10 is in the books. But, Michael, as you well know, this is normally now we're always going to have the quarterback carousel in the NFL. Who's going to play? Who's not going to play? Got to ask those coaches all about that. You know, Brian Daboll had been pretty steadfast, I would say, most of this year. Daniel Jones is the guy. Daniel Jones is the guy. He was asked again about it, Michael, and I want to get your reaction to it and see if this change in tone and tenor, what it says to you.
Daniel Jones still your starting quarterback going forward?
Yeah, we're gonna spend a lot of time here watching our tape and evaluating things, and we'll do that as a coaching staff over the next week here.
That's a little bit different, Brian, than the yes that you give us to that question when we ask it every week. So I think, to be clear, everybody's going to assume that means yes, you're at least considering a change. Is that fair?
Well, I would say we're evaluating, our team at the bye week is what we're doing.
Look, he's got a big problem, and he knows it, and he can dance around it all he wants. But the issue isn't, are we going to play him to win this year? The issue is if we play him and he gets injured, then we're on the hook for $23 million next year. Mm. And do we want to really be on that? The contract was written so they could get out of it fairly easily after 2 years. There was really no guarantees in 25 or 26 that were skill and injury guaranteed. And so to me, that's the question you have to. You're 2-8. You have no chance of making the playoffs. You're not a good team. You just lost to Carolina. Are you a better team with Drew Lock? Probably not. Are you a better team with Tommy DeVito? Probably not, although the catering probably would be better in the locker room. But the reality of it is what do you want to do here now? I mean, like, can we really risk this $23 million being exposed? Mm. Do we give it another 2 weeks? I mean, Daniel Jones has not always been healthy. They run him. I mean, on the podcast, on the show this weekend, I heard that they asked Brian Daboll about how often he runs them. He said, if I think it's a good run, I'm going to run him. I'll call it over and over again. So Brian has no concern about keeping him healthy. But the issue becomes is $23 million of his $25 base is guaranteed for injury. $23 million. So, look, okay, if they cut him, let's just say they cut him and he's injured, they can't get that back because he's injured. But if they cut him, it's not guaranteed. He goes out there, they get away from the $23 million. They pick up they pick up cap room. Now they got to go out and find a quarterback. Look, they're the odds-on favorite to be the first pick overall in the draft.
Wow. They're
going to have their pick of quarterback. Why would you risk this, Dave?
It's a great question. And again, Daboll did inherited Danny Dimes when he came in from Buffalo and became the new head coach. So I'm sure those conversations happened then. These years later, maybe he says, look, we got to move on and get a new guy, and we'll figure out. I mean, if you're drafting number one, we'll figure out if they do, in fact, end up drafting one, you would assume that's the direction they would go. So it does feel like a quandary. He has changed his tune a little bit. I'll be curious to see what they do after the bye week. In Indianapolis, Michael, Shane Steichen is confirming that, yes, it's still going to be Joe Flacco to start next week against the Jets. I want you to hear from the coach. And again, it's almost like we're reading into the body language and the way they're saying what they're saying.
Optically, like, how do you explain the Anthony decision, the Joe Flacco decision when it's looked as bad the last 2 weeks, and you're sticking with this guy?
Yeah, no, I understand the question. Joe's a veteran guy, like I've said. He's had 2 games that he'd want back. But again, he goes out there, throws some good passes. Obviously, the interceptions, there's 3 of those. There's 2 that he'd want back. Again, you just stick with it. You grind through the process of this whole thing, man. It really is a process. So we're going through that process right now. And right now, Joe's still our guy.
Well, look, the Colts quarterback the last 4 weeks are 13-58 on third down. Oof. 22%. Their defense is 27th on third down, right? And so Flacco comes in. He's supposed to be the savior, going to help him out because he actually can manage the game better. But that's really all he can do is manage the game better. I mean, Richardson has got no really consistency with his play, but Joe doesn't offer you any upside at all. And they never seem to get any of these questions corrected. I mean, the fact that –
people are saying that the kid's work habits are why he's not there. You got, they have, 50 coaches on that coaching staff? I mean, it's ridiculous, right? Like, are you telling me the kid's not working hard? I mean, that's the issue. You got 3 quarterback coaches. You got 10. I mean, you got everybody over there. I mean, at some point, you got to fix the problems. And I think really when you look at it, Flacco's averaged 13 points per game, and he can't really get anything going. He's 6 yards per attempt down the field. And once the play breaks down, it's over. I mean, look, I understand why he's playing Richardson. I think I understand why Joe Flacco is no longer playing in the league on a consistent basis as a starter, because he's a little bit like a middle reliever, Dave. The more innings he pitches, the less effective he becomes.
Great point. And I was saying, if we're sitting here, year of our Lord 2024, talking about Joe Flacco to be the savior of your franchise, where are we? The guy was out of the league. And all of a sudden we're expecting Joe Flacco to be, the guy they gave the big contract to a decade ago in Baltimore. I mean, it's insane. And I think, to your point, it speaks more to Anthony Richardson and where he is, that you even had to look to Joe Flacco to kick the tires on that guy. So I look at it, too, and I just go, man, if this is where we are in Indy, it doesn't look really good. By the way, very quickly, if you have not checked out the new VSiN Watch app, you have to do so. You can do it by going to Apple app, Google Play. Check it out because it's all there for you. You can browse clips by sport. You can stream video to your smart TV. You can use the search feature. It's going to give you specific VSiN experts to analyze what they're talking about for this week. The VSiN Watch app, it's free. So download it both by Apple and Android users. Do not delay. Visit the Apple or Google App Store now. Download it, and you can become part of the sports betting network. Now, in Chicago, Michael, it feels like a mess. And Matt Eberflus says, hey, there's going to be changes going forward following this loss to the Patriots. But he does confirm also, speaking about quarterbacks, that Caleb Williams is going to remain as the starter. When you see the ship, I'm not saying it's hit the iceberg, but it does feel like it's kind of dead ahead for Matt Eberflus. What could he possibly do now to avoid said iceberg?
Well, I mean, look, this guy's only completed 26 passes over 20 yards in his NFL career. 26 passes. And he's had over 80 attempts. I mean, he's been a disaster when he has to throw the ball over 10 yards. It's been really bad. He hasn't. Now, in fairness to the kid, the offensive line is not very good. He holds on to the ball way too long, and for all this money they spent on receivers. Think about this, Dave. Not only they signed DJ Moore, give him a new contract, they signed Keenan Allen, trade away a pick, give him a new contract, draft Rome Odunze, pay him a lot of money, re-sign Cole Kmet, pay him a lot of money. Oh, by the way, let's bring Gerald Everett back in to be the backup tight end, pay him a lot of money. Then we'll sign DeAndre Swift, pay him a lot of money. And here they are, and they advertised their offense this year as never punting. They're 26th in punts per play. They rank 31st in yards per play. They're 32nd in plays over 10 yards. I mean, there's no explosiveness to the offense because if you can get them to hold the ball, if you can play tight man. I mean, Keenan Allen's a good player, but he's always covered. I mean, there's NFL Open and there's College Open, and I don't think Caleb understands what College Open and NFL Open are because you got to throw the ball. You got to throw the ball in those areas. And, he just doesn't seem to have that idea. Anytime the play breaks down, it's when it's actually better for him. And I think, to me, this offense, and I think it's more on Poles than it is on Eberflus. I'm not saying Shane Waldron doesn't deserve some of the blame, but there's no physicality to this team at all.
Right.
Your lead back can't be DeAndre Swift. 2 teams told you he's not a lead back. You play in Chicago on heavy grass. You got to run the football. You need a big guy. You could have Swift on the team. I think Swift's a really good player. He's a complementary piece. He adds to the team. He doesn't build the team. It's the same thing with Christian McCaffrey. Christian McCaffrey is the greatest luxury item you could have because he adds to the team so many ways. But you still need a pounder at times in there. You still need somebody to kind of help him a little bit get away so he's not taking it. I'm not trying to excuse the quarterback because the quarterback probably is not an easy guy to coach. He thinks he has all the answers. He's probably challenging. He won't cut it loose. He's seeing things that aren't there. Watch the tape, and he's got guys that he could throw it to. He won't throw it. I don't know how Eberflus fixes it.
And that's the problem, right? Is that not to say that Matt Eberflus is out, because who knows what the Bears are going to do at the end of the year. But if we're asking, Sean Penn, dead man walking, to cure the quarterback who's going to be there, Like that's kind of a disconnect, because if you don't, then we're starting over with somebody we don't even know, whether that's Shane Waldron or somebody else, right? That's kind of the problem, is if Eberflus is the guy charged with turning this thing around, Michael, he might not be there next year to turn this thing around.
Well, it's the same exact thing they did before when they hired, every coach, they brought a quarterback in. When they brought John Fox in, They drafted Trubisky. When they brought in, Justin Fields, it was Matt Nagy. And now when they brought in Caleb Williams, it was Matt Eberflus. And all those three coaches got fired afterwards.
They keep doing the same thing.
So it's the whole regime change. There's no symmetry. The problem with the Bears is they don't have any organizational, philosophical belief in them. They just are hiring schemes.
Yeah, it's like they keep doing what's the definition of insanity? Trying the same thing and looking for a desired result. It's the same result, and it's not good in Chicago. Matt Youmans is going to join the program next here on the Lombardi Line.
And they're off.
Sports betting game with VSiN's exclusive betting splits. Stay ahead with real-time market trends and track bet percentages on any matchup. Then uncover the edge by comparing them to the amount of bets placed to find out where the sharp money is headed. Upgrade to VSiN Pro to access betting splits, live odds, line moves, power ratings, and in-depth game analysis. Go to VSiN.com/pro to join VSiN, the sports betting network.
This is VSiN, the sports betting network. This is the Lombardi Line with former NFL executive Michael Lombardi on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.
We continue the Lombardi Line here on a Tuesday. Dave Ross and Michael Lombardi with you. Michael, whenever we have Matt Youmans on the program, joining us now on the Progressive Guest Line, of course, does a great job at the network. VSiN Primetime, Friday Football Invitational. I don't know, do you think he's staying up to be with us or getting up early to be with us? You think he's staying up?
He's staying with us. No, he's on that college schedule. He's not going to bed until late, and then he gets up. So, I don't think Matt needs a lot of sleep.
I don't know how you do it,
I'm sure he's had a nice fast food meal. He's going to do this hit. He's going to take a little siesta, and he's going to be right back at it again.
Matt, did you sleep during the Monday Night Football game last night?
I did not, Dave. I did not at all because I was doing a show in the VSiN studio last night. We were watching the game, and I kept saying, you guys, I felt like it was August. I thought we were watching a preseason game.
Yeah.
It was so sloppy. There were so many mistakes on both sides. Boy, that was another bad football game last night. But the Dolphins needed it badly, and they got it. They were 2-6, and if you go to 2-7, you're done. With the schedule coming up, I'm not going to say the Dolphins are done at 3-6. I think they got too tall of a mountain to climb to get back in contention, but they do have a little bit of hope since they got that win last night.
2 weeks in a row, we've seen the Rams really. I mean, they walked out of Seattle, the fortunate team. Even Sean McVay said it was a weird game. It was unexpected, and thankfully Mike McDonald gave them a gift on a silver platter. But what's your feeling for the Rams? I mean, I was really impressed with how well they played defensively, and offensively, I was surprised that even with their couple of their key offensive linemen back, the line didn't look good.
You're right, because that's one thing I thought the Rams were going to look better offensively last night. They had 3 offensive linemen who were injured coming back, and you thought they were going to be able to run the ball more effectively, get better pass protection. Didn't have it. Matthew Stafford was under a lot of pressure, and he's not very good when he's under pressure. And you could see that last night, too. I'll tell you what jumps out to me when I watch the Rams. I like the draft pick at the time, but Jared Verse, who was the number 19 pick in the draft, is a stud, man. He's, you lose Aaron Donald, but you pick up a guy in Verse who I think is going to be a foundation for that defense. That's a guy to build around. Jared Verse is he's a game wrecker, and he kept the Rams in that last night. The Dolphins only had 238 total yards. They only ran, I think, around, I think it was 53 plays, but 238 total yards. There were so many turnovers in the game last night, and the Dolphins did a better job. Really, I thought it came down to third down efficiency in a lot of cases. Dolphins were converting on third downs, and Tua, who was not very good, actually did make a few plays when he had to, and that was kind of the difference. Stafford didn't do anything last night to get the Rams over the hump. They kept getting to the red zone and would bog down. And when you got to kick 5 field goals, you're not going to win games.
By the way, Verse right now is the huge favorite, odds on -$5 to be the defensive Roy. You see Fisk down there as well as 20-1. So it looks like that foundation, Matt, as you're mentioning there, is really strong without Aaron Donald going forward. So at least they got some young studs on that defense. Matt, my big miss of the week was the Bears, but just a terrible read on my part against the Patriots. Now the Patriots going to play those Rams, and I know now the Rams are thinking, boy, we talk about margin of error, that thing might be gone as well. Patriots getting 4.5. What did you make of that win? Was that more about the Bears, or do you think the Patriots actually have something going?
I think it was more about the bad news Bears. But, I'm hesitant to buy into the Patriots. I did like him against the Bears on Sunday. Just didn't trust the Bears laying that type of number. But, man, that was one of the ugliest offensive performances you're ever going to see. Caleb Williams sacked 9 times. He was sacked 7 times on blitzes, and only one drive longer than 21 yards. But I do think you've seen a bit of improvement in the Patriots. I know a lot of people wanted to bury the Patriots a couple weeks ago, and they've improved. I think Drake May's kind of energized the team a little bit because he's not playing great, but he can make some plays. He can make some things happen, and Jacoby Brissett led that scoring drive to beat the Jets. And Drake May stepped in, and he's been pretty good, I think, the last couple weeks. I just didn't see a lot that I liked in the Rams last night. And like Michael talked about the game in Seattle 2 weeks ago, too, the Rams were lucky as hell to win that game in Seattle. And so you go into Foxborough, you're laying more than a field goal, and you're facing a defense that was putting a lot of pressure on Caleb Williams. If you do the same thing to Matthew Stafford, I like your chances to win or at least stay in the game. Like I said, they sacked Caleb Williams 7 times on blitzes. I think the Patriots are going to blitz Stafford a lot too, because if you looked at him last night when he was under pressure, he was frazzled. So I think the Pats are going to do that. And Drake May can make a few plays to keep him in the game. Not crazy about the bet, but I do like the Pats getting 4.5 or 5 points against the Rams.
I kind of agree. I'm a little bit concerned about, the overvaluing the Patriots, because when you watch that tape, the Bears' offense was so bad. I just have issue there, but I agree with you. The one game that stuck out to me as soon as I saw the card was the Broncos and the Falcons. Broncos were a 1.5 point favorite. The Falcons are the 6-4 teams, top of the West. But here the Broncos are, which really. You watch that, I'm sure you have. You watch that Bronco Chief tape. I mean, the Broncos physically beat up Patrick Mahomes. I mean, for them not to come out with the win was criminal. It really was. It was really a shame. I know they didn't score in the second half, but to me, they did a lot to beat him up and physically create some issues. I think they'll do the same thing to Kirk Cousins. I agree with you taking the Broncos and laying the 2.
Well, when I was on with you guys last week, my 2 best bets were the Broncos and the Steelers. And I'm probably going to be on both those teams again this week. Definitely on the Broncos again, laying the short number at home. I like them better in the underdog role, but I'm going to play them here. What you said about the Broncos defense is exactly right. Denver pressured Mahomes on 20 of 49 dropbacks in that game. That's the largest percentage this season. Mahomes was 5 of 14 when he was pressured. You can put pressure on Kirk Cousins, kind of like I was talking about with Matthew Stafford. He's not going to be very good. Cousins is immobile in the pocket. He was not very good against pressure against the Saints, and I think the Broncos could be smart enough to do the same thing to him here. Now, the Falcons rolled up a bunch of yards against the New Orleans defense, 468 and 6.4 per play, but they're not going to do that against this Denver defense. And, like I said at the end of the preseason, I thought that Broncos team, and I know, Michael, you were on board with that, this Broncos team is going to be better than a lot of people thought. I played him over the win total of 5.5. Well, we should be sitting here today looking at a 6-4 Broncos team, but they're 5-5 because they couldn't execute the field goal at the end of the game. I think this Denver team's got some upside. Bo Nix getting a little bit better. He's been more efficient, more accurate with some of his throws. Sean Payton's doing a good job with him. So I like the Broncos here. I think laying this short number at home, they're going to get the win they should have gotten in Kansas City.
You mentioned you were on the Steelers last week with those Broncos, both those cash. You're leaning towards the Steelers this week against the Ravens, and so far money's coming a little bit on Baltimore, up to 3.5 now in the Steel City. Early kick, 1 o'clock Eastern, not in prime time. It feels like it should be a primetime game. What do you make of the Steelers? It's a lean, but it's not in pocket yet.
Well, it's not a bet yet because I think it's 3 everywhere in the market. I'm not seeing 3.5.
I got
3.5 at DraftKings.
Yep, I got 3.5 exactly.
3.5 at DraftKings, but you gotta pay a price for that. It looks like some other books are going to move to 3.5 later in the week, and that's why I'm probably going to wait and get that 3.5 with the Steelers. And I think it's going to show up here in a couple days, maybe today. Who knows? But I've played the Steelers a lot. I was talking about this last night. I think I'm 5-2 playing the Steelers this season, and it seems like I've been on them almost every week. And I did really like them against Washington last week. And the defense did a great job against Jaden Daniels. He was 17 for 34, no touchdowns, sacked 3 times. Washington had a season low 242 yards and a season high 6 punts in that game. And I think the Pittsburgh defense knows Lamar Jackson inside and out. These teams know each other inside and out. And Russell Wilson has produced some explosive plays, not really consistent, but has produced some big plays in the offense. And this is typically a 1-score game when these teams get together. You give me more than 3, I'm probably going to take it with a home dog here.
Yeah, I think to me that what Pittsburgh did, setting the edge on both sides, they really didn't let him run. They didn't let Daniels out of the pocket. They limited his rushing. They limited his loose plays. I mean,
Denver did exactly the same thing with Mahomes. They they spied Mahomes. They tried to keep him in the pocket. They knew the second play was going to be more disastrous than the first play, and they did a great job. Unfortunately, they didn't come away with the win. Let's shift to college basketball. I mean, I can't believe it's starting already, but I know you're an expert in the area. Duke, Kentucky, over 160 is your play. You like that number?
Yeah, I do. I think 160 or 160.5 out there is the best number. Right now, these teams have multiple scorers and guys who can shoot the three. And early in the season, coaches don't try to take the air out of the ball and control the game. They'll let these guys free flow offensively. Kentucky averaging 101.5 points in its first 2 games. Duke averaging 98. So these teams are really capable offensively. Instead of playing a side here, I'm going to look over the total.
And we didn't have time to talk about the game of the year, the Cowboys and the Texans on Monday night, but I'm sure Matt will talk a lot about it on VSiN Primetime. We're back with more in a moment.
Got a good thing coming, so wait and see. It's a good.
You spoke, we listened. Introducing the all-new VSiN Watch app. Now, you can watch and listen to VSiN expert analysis live wherever you are. Missed a show? No problem. Catch replays of VSiN's full lineup at any time. View highlights sorted by sport. Or use the search feature to find specific teams and topics you're looking for. And the best part? It's free for a limited time. Download the VSiN Watch app today. Available now on the App Store and Google Play. And join us on the Sports Betting Network.
This is the Lombardi Line with former NFL executive Michael Lombardi on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.
We've got a lot of injury updates. Michael Lombardi here as we look at some of the changing numbers throughout the NFL as we begin week number 11 in the league on Thursday. A really marquee matchup between the Commanders and the Eagles. But I think the big one on Sunday, we talked a little bit about it with Matt Youmans just in the last segment, that Steelers-Ravens game. And we know that Alex Highsmith is going to undergo an MRI, looking like that pass rusher extraordinaire might not be available for at least 2 to 3 games. So, Michael, you made this point last week in the show, why they went and got Preston Smith. How significant a setback could that possibly be for the Steel City guys?
Well, look, you always want to have, when you have 2 good outside rushers, you need a third, because if teams throw the ball as much as they do, you're not going to be as effective rushing 40 times a game. Your legs get heavy. It's hard to be effective. We see it in the 2-minute drill quite often. So you always want to have at the defensive end position what we call 3 for 2, 3 players to play 2 positions, and you rotate them. Now, obviously, you want T.J. Watt on the field when the game counts the most, and you want your 2 best players when that happens. But, but when they lost Herbig, and I said this when they played the Cowboys, the only reason they lost the Cowboys was Herbig got injured. Mm-hmm. If Herbig's on the field when that game's coming down, they're going to probably rush the passer, create a negative play, and Dallas won't convert the 4th and 7 for the touchdown. But they didn't have him. He pulled a hamstring, and he's been out since then. But now he'll come back this week, which then gives them back the 3 for 2, losing Highsmith. So I think they can overcome it. They have Preston Smith, who's not as good as Highsmith. We get that. Herbig is, though. Herbig's really good. Herbig's one of the best young players they have on their team. And he'll make a difference when he goes in the game. He'll be a problem for the Steelers to block, just like T.J. Watt will be. But, look, this game really comes down to you can't have slow guys on the field, right? You can't have anybody who can't tackle Lamar in space. You got to have fast guys. You got to be able to play run defense out of your nickel defense. It's a hard thing to do. You got to have physicality inside. You got to be able to have safeties that can run but tackle in the box. You have to have a whole special defense when you play Baltimore, because if you line up in base and you try to play with 4 slow defensive linemen, good luck tackling Lamar.
Conversely, on the other side of the ball for John Harbaugh, we don't know if they're going to have Kyle Hamilton and they're going to see how he looks, quote unquote, here on Wednesday tomorrow. He's such a hybrid player, Michael, for them. How does that change their defense if he can't go against the Steelers?
Well, he's really created a new position. It's kind of the position I think many people thought that Jamal Adams could do, right? Which is not a linebacker and not a safety. Right, he's kind of the hybrid. He plays on the slot. He's a very good blitzer. Can attack the pocket, and he can tackle in the open field very effectively. And then he can play underneath coverage. He can get underneath the tight end. If he has to be in one-on-one all the time, I don't think that would work. But the matchups favor him. If he can get on a guy like Kelsey who has length, he can match him with his length. So it creates a matchup problem. Now, would he be on Freiermuth? Yeah, that would be the right matchup. He would be able to get in Freiermuth, to be able to handle him. He wouldn't be out-physicaled by Freiermuth. He'd be able to play with him. So that would be something you'd be concerned about. But, look, Hamilton is their joker player in their defense. He's very effective, and they use him in a lot of different areas.
This would be if the Steelers, and by the way, we're seeing 3.5, as Matt Youmans was alluding to as well. Then it feels like it's coming in towards the Baltimore side here. If the Steelers are able to get this one and get to 8-2 and give the 4th loss to the Ravens and 1 in pocket before they have their game later on in the year, it would go a long way to possibly deciding who's going to win the North. So a very, very important matchup there. But Noah Highsmith for the Steelers. We'll find out about Kyle Hamilton for the Ravens. Sam Laporta, it looks like he could miss some action this week. Maybe the good news is you're playing the Jags and you feel like you might be able to buy some time there.
Yeah.
But he is a key cog, and I know they got a lot of weapons there in Detroit, but he is certainly one of those key cogs for Jared Goff.
Yeah, no question. But I think this is a game where you, as a head coach, you earn your salary, right? Everybody in America thinks it's a no-brainer. I mean, everybody that has Detroit left on their card are going to play them against Jacksonville, and it's probably the right play. Home team, that they're going to need it. But to me, Dan Campbell has to get his team up. I would rest Laporta, not because I'm taking Jacksonville easy, just because we need to have him down the home stretch. But Jacksonville hasn't announced who they're going to be the starting quarterback yet. That's kind of been underkept. I can't imagine that knowing how much they like C.J. Beathard, knowing that probably they watch Mac Jones play and they're not happy with that, that they could go to C.J. Beathard. He's been there before. They brought him in. They guaranteed his contract after they took him off Miami's practice squad. So I think that would be the concern. Look, this Detroit, I think for Campbell, it's about we got to play better, fellas. We got lucky down in Houston. We turned the ball over way too many times. I know one of them was on a Hail Mary at the end of the half, but still, we gave the game. That game shouldn't have been close. We got to play better, and I think that's the driving force against them. This line is up to 13 in a lot of places. It was at 12.5. I think it's going to stay under the 14, but boy, it's tough to take Jacksonville. But it's tough to take Detroit, too, here. That's a lot of points.
It is. And, again, that opened 10 up to 13, 12.5s out there, 10 opening before we saw the action between the Lions and the Texans, of course, what the Jaguars look like offensively, not very good against Minnesota. And, oh, by the way, you're so right about the 5 picks, and people are like, they forget that Stingley dropped one, too. So, I heard, Collinsworth really trying to bail out Goff a little bit, but I'm like, Stingley had one. It could have been 6. It could have been 6
could have
just
been
as
6,
easily.
yeah.
Right. So,
it's like Mahomes the other day.
Right.
Mahomes, that game could have ended. Mahomes threw one right to the defensive lineman, Zach Allen. It went right in his hands, and he dropped it. Look, we tend to exaggerate these areas. It gets a little bit too much. Everybody's great. It's like when Chris was talking about Cam Robinson when he went to Minnesota. They just traded the guy for a 7th-round pick. Don't tell me he's he's Anthony Munoz.
Munoz, Baselli on the other side. Yeah, exactly. I look at the same thing. I'm like, I get it. You guys don't want to be critical all the time. That's fine, but let's call it what it is. Goff didn't play well, and he could have had even more picks.
Goff was terrible.
He was terrible.
Goff was horrible. Just like Tua wasn't very good last night. He made a couple plays, but Tua looked really bad last night. He held the ball too long. He took negative plays. He made 2 really good plays. The scramble for the 3rd and 16 that they converted, and then early in the game when he scrambled and got out of it and he threw it to get the first scoring drive. But other than that, look, credit Jonnu Smith for catching an inside route, a web route and bringing it down there. I didn't think they were going to score more than 10 points watching that game. I was really disappointed in Miami's offensive line and their offense last night, and I was really enlightened by how good the Rams are.
Yeah, they've got some young talent defensively, LA does, but again, we got to call like we see it, and I think that's why we love doing the show. By the way, if you're not a VSiN Pro subscriber just yet, no better time than the present to do so. Daily Best Bets, 19 hours of live programming. We're going to give you power, strength, better ratings, of course, exclusive betting splits. So start that VSiN Pro subscription today, as little as $9.99. Everything is going to help you up your betting game. So sign up at VSiN.com/subscribe. That's VSIN.com/subscribe. One other note, and again, we got the big one coming up Thursday night to kick off week number 11 between the Commanders and the Eagles. Fly Eagles fly, by the way, 3.5 on that one, the total around 49. Jordan Mailata, they have opened up the practice window for him, Michael, in Philadelphia at left tackle. I don't know exactly when, a time frame, what that means, but what will that mean for Philadelphia when they get Mailata back?
I think if they open up the window, unless he has a setback, I feel pretty comfortable that he'll probably play this week against Washington. Now it's an early game, right? It's a Thursday.
Yep.
So they got to feel really comfortable that he could do that. But if you open the window up, if you think he has no chance, you're probably not going to open up the window up. You wait till next week to open it up. But I think if you feel like he has a chance, and again, this isn't a lock because it's a Thursday night game, I think you feel like he could play in the game. So, look, this line has been 3.5. I think it could come back down to 3. It's going to be a fun game. Not many people, are betting. It's kind of an interesting split on the game here when I look at it because there's a lot of, Washington isn't getting as bet as I thought they would. I think that last game kind of let people think, well, maybe there is a blueprint to stopping how good this Washington offense is.
Very quickly, because I didn't get to it yesterday in the show. I'm watching that Cowboy debacle against the Fly Eagles Fly, and I'm waiting for Sirianni to run it up, which he didn't do, right? Kicked a couple field goals and then pulled his starters early in the 4th, and I went, oh, no, Michael. Is that Vic Fangio? Is that Kellen Moore? Are they telling him to be an adult in the room? Like, was he was already thinking about Thursday night, And
I think that's what it was.
Right.
I think that probably the all his people that give him the analytical advice were like, let's get these guys out of the game so we can get some. We got Thursday. And that's the smart thing to do, right? If the game's out of control, there's no sense in playing anybody. Just let's get on to Thursday. This game's over. The clock's our opponent, not the Cowboys. I know as painful as that is for you to hear, but that was the reality.
It was reality, and I went, man, I hope Sirianni's not growing up on me. I don't want to see an educated head coach on the other sideline because it looks smart. And I was like, wow, the Eagles might be for real. We've got a lot to get to in hour number 2, plus the game of the week. We'll talk a lot about that. Come on back. It's the Lombardi Line.
Sports bettors, this is your chance. VSiN is bringing you an unbeatable deal. Get a VSiN Pro